Hello everyone, I'm here with Tech Motorsports, and here we are with part 3 of the E30 S65 with the DCT build. So we're going to pick up pretty much right where we left off at from part 2. So let's get straight to it. Okay, so this was the one that kind of took me a little bit of time trying to think of all the steps if I went in a certain direction and what it's going to involve, what I'm going to have to change, that kind of stuff. So it took me a little bit to get this and to get it to where I wanted it, and then to able to adapt the booster and the master slave. Now this was my main problem. I will touch base on this master cylinder in a few minutes, but let's just go over this area. So initially, this is the piece that I ended up cutting out. As you can see, pretty much all the way straight from the top up here and went straight all the way down towards the bottom. And this is where the steering column went through, and the booster, and this is the electrical section. This is the throttle cable. One was the clutch slave, and then the clutch slave line. So we will not be needing any of these three right here. So, this one, I'll touch base later on that one too. So yeah, so we were going to end up having technically at this point two holes. So as you can see on here, this is the outer edge of the booster holes, the OEM, kind of close to where it's at. So you can see how far to the left I had to push the booster in place, and you can also see how tight it is here to the strut tower. It is easy to install and to remove the master slave with this installed. So that was one of the things I was trying to do, is have enough room to where I can, or this could be maintenance without having to drop the whole engine. And that's the reason why, again, I was looking for something of this size, because you have to think of what's going to be installed, being the V8, and you have to remove the valve covers, which we replaced the valve cover gasket, so we wouldn't have to worry about that, but still, you just never know. So it's really close. And of course, the steering mechanism. So we end up getting the V8 swapped E36 Condor Speed steering joint system. So we got that. And as you can see, some of the bins here. Now this is kind of close to where I got it. It's the bracket that I have here is temporary, and the reason why I say temporary only because I may change it just a tad bit, but I want to be able to get it in there and tacked into place and make sure that this system is going to work correctly for what I want. Because remember, originally I was going to end up cutting the exhaust on the last runner on each header, but I decided not to do that, and that's the reason why for this little slot out here, because it gave me the room for the header. And as this hole right here is technically where the steering column hole was going to end up coming out. So you can see exactly, it's right in the middle where the header would go. So yeah, so that was the reason to all this. I did its best cleanup in this area to get this nice and looking. I still have to do a little bit more touch-ups on that area, but yeah, so let's look on the other side. Let me turn around, and I hope this one still catches on. I think it will. If not, I'm gonna move it over real quick. Hopefully that is good. As you can see, this is the section that I end up cutting out on this side for the header room, because of that last cylinder. The headers go back towards in the engine cabin into the to the firewall. So I end up notching that out, and what I end up finding out is by looking at the driver's side versus the passenger side, the driver's side I have more room, and I even have enough room to where I could install the OEM heat shields on the headers. This one is a little bit, I'm not too sure on how much room I have. I may cut this down a little bit and give me a little bit more of a concaveness going into the cabin, so I have a little bit more room. But I will see. Once I get those on there, I'll be able to verify before all of the gets taken care of. But again, I went ahead and kind of cleaned out a bunch of the stuff to make it look a little bit decent, and just to see if I have any holes, anything of that sort, because at one point I was waiting and I kept changing my mind on the booster that I was using. So yeah, let's take a look at the inside of the panel that I just installed. Here's the view from the inside. What I end up having to do, or what I did to make this a little bit more, I wouldn't say seamless, but to get it more smooth, I end up adding a certain section right here. I knew this was going to be an issue because I'll do it this way. I end up adding this before I did the installation. Originally, where this line was at here is where I had it cut, because I didn't fully think it completely ahead, which I tried to, and I just did not want to have like a 90-degree lip here. So what I did is I took the panel out and I added this section here, and then tacked it in place and did everything else. This section that you can see here is where I welded the section that is connected to the strut tower, which is on the left-hand side of the booster. But yeah, I went in and I cleaned it as much as possible to get me, looking for any holes, any imperfections, so I could go ahead and make sure I take care of that. Also, this will be a very smooth transition for the carpet. And as you can see, here's my booster all the way up to the top. I got it as high as possible because at this point, my main goal was the inside of the engine bay. I will be able to make something work here with the bracket for the brake pedal. Now the bracket for the brake pedal will have to be modified. I will touch base here shortly on that. And yeah, so that's pretty much on the inside. I have hopefully it comes back here. So I went ahead and installed the seat and the steering wheel as well, and got it in the position that it is going to be driven for the most part, and I can only do it for my height. So I'm pretty sure what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this steering wheel kind of like a tilt steering, but unfortunately it's not going to be by just pulling something. I'm going to have probably a couple screws so you can drop it down or bring it back up. But as of right now, the way it's positioned, through the section of the steering wheel, you're able to see the gauge cluster. So that was the main goal, is to sit in the car and have the steering wheel in the good position. And that's where I have everything locked in at this point. So let's get to the booster side of everything that really made me kind of really, do a lot of digging and trying to figure out in what direction to go in. If you remember the first one I did, we did a brake booster delete. On this one, we did not want to do a brake booster delete. So I had to come up and try to figure out how I can make something happen. So a lot of research and a lot of digging and a lot of online kind of, trying to figure out what I can use. And I found something, and yeah, so let's take a quick peek at it. I would like to add one quick thing on the steering column. So because the car, I don't know what they did with the previous install, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not very knowledgeable on the E30 chassis. I know they're similar to the E36. Normally I work on E36s in E46s. That's pretty much where I've done all my work on. But with the E30, with the steering column that came in, I want to say, I remember reading when I first started looking at this whole thing, I want to say it's a non-ABS, sorry, not non-ABS, non-airbag steering column. So the very small little shaft here, it telescopes in and out, which this is what part of it looks like that's inside the other addition to the steering column itself, because there's a yoke like halfway up through that column itself. The other E30 has the mounting mechanism and everything up close to where the firewall is at. So I think that is a airbagged one. But anyways, so what I'm having to do is to be able to get this to collapse a little bit more, to give me some room. I took about just under 2 inches off is what I cut off the shaft, because I pulled it completely out, and you could end up cutting it down because it's bringing it in closer, and I'm not using the full extension towards the rack. That's why I went ahead and cut it, and there is a little bit of movement in there. Also, what I ended up doing was on the end of where the Condor Speed yokes are at, I had to cut, it was probably about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, a solid non-threaded section on the rod, which I ended up cutting that off so that way I could put the ends, the Condor Speed ends on that steering column. And yeah, that's it. I end up using, just to add more to the steering column, it is an E30 steering column and an E36, because this is a Z3 rack that came with the car, and that's why I'm using an E36 splined yoke at the rack and E30 spline one on the steering column itself. And yeah, so back to the rest of it. And here we are with the brake boosters. So let's go and name each one out. So this one is the original that came out of the car from the E30. This one I ended up buying just to see if I can make it work. This is a dual chamber one from an E93, in E93, a 2011 335i. And then this one here, drum roll please, Mazda Miata NA, so it's a 90. The whole brake booster and master cylinder. Now, if you could see the different sizes. So this one is 11 inches. This one is, let's say, 9 inches, and this is about 8 3/4 inches. The whole thing with this install, with the engine, was must have a brake booster. So that's pretty much led me to that. So I only had so much room to deal with to get a brake booster in that area. Now, I did think about one point, can I install the booster on the inside of the cabin and just have the master slave bolt onto the firewall? I did seriously think about that, but it was going to be creating a whole new one of these. And then I also had to worry about the rod length and everything like that for brake pedal travel, because at that point it's going to push that brake pedal back towards the driver a lot, and that would just be no bueno. So I decided not to go that route, even though I think it was a good idea for the most part, but it's still more to where I just didn't want to go that route. It was going to be a lot of work, and yeah, so that's what I'm dealing with. That's what we have now. I did find, well, before I go into that, so originally I started with my first, working on my templates, because of course this has the hose and still has the rod, so I wasn't able to go in and put the darn booster in place and be like, oh yeah, this is gonna work. So I had to create templates. So this is the E30 one. Of course, this is the back end, and this is what I mounted to the firewall. And then this is the third one that I built, but originally I did this one because it's almost the same. This was the E93 one for the 335i, so I could figure out to see if that's going to end up working. But because of the distance or the depth of it, single chamber, dual chamber, single chamber. Because of the dual chamber one, it stuck out too far, too close to the strut tower. I wasn't able to get it in, and also because of the depth of it, it wouldn't allow me to drop it down enough to give me clearance all the way around. So unfortunately, having it here, having in all the measurements, because I wasn't able to find any measurements online on this stupid thing, so I just pulled the trigger and bought it just to see, and it's not gonna work. But anyways, so then I took the same templates, trimmed it down, and I got the Mazda one. So this gave me the availability to have the engine in there, and I had a lot of movement in that firewall area, in that one little spot. So, yeah, so what I ended up doing, of course, I created my templates in the back. I got from the holes in the center. I even went as far enough as I added a little level in there, so that way I have it level for the mounting hose. So that way when this is mounted, it's mounted straight up and down and not cockeyed, because I thought it was straight and it wasn't straight. So yeah, so I went ahead and did that, and that helped a lot. Of course, it took time to do all these 3 different ones, but I went ahead and did it because it's better than to drill the holes and then be like, that's not gonna work. So yes, that's where we're at. So let's get into, I'm gonna get into the pedal real quick, because I'm using the Mazda one. This section here is not going to work, so I'm gonna make a new bracket, and that's going to fit in there. I bought a brand new one of these, or I bought another one of these, a used one, because this is the wrong pedal, of course, and this was cut off here. Now, if you remember, I mentioned it previously that when I put the clutch in, the steering column moved, it was just jacked. And I'm thinking that was the reason why this section here should have probably bolted to the steering column. I'm not 100% sure, because unfortunately I had Mason remove all that stuff, so I don't know how it came out, but I'm thinking that was the issue. So I decided to get me another one,
to start from scratch and go from there. Now I don't have to worry about locating the new pedal itself, because it'll be a automatic pedal, because that's the one that I purchased, because it's a DCT, so I don't need a clutch one. I don't need that one anymore. So that has to be slightly modified, and yes, it will have to be, the mounting on the inside will have to be modified to mount that, because it shifted over to the left hand side a little bit. So I did some digging on the Mazda before I pulled the trigger, just to let you know. So I found a lot of specs on the Mazda one as an ratio for the booster, and then a ratio for the master cylinder, and I just did not find anything on the E30. So I started thinking about it, and then what I realized was, okay, if I do a brake booster delete, it's going to be a hard pedal constantly. There are ones that will liven it up a little bit, but it's going to be hard. And the customer said, listen, I want a booster. I do not want to do a brake delete. I've driven a car like that and it sucks. I've driven a car like that and it sucks. So I told him, okay, I'm going to try to work something. I don't know what I'm going to do yet or what I'm going to use, but we'll soon find out once I get to that portion of the build. And that's what I've got. And so yeah, I didn't find anything on any specs on this one, but looking at the weight of the car, I'm sure the E30 is probably a couple 100 pounds more heavier than the Miata. This one came with the Mazda one came with a proportionate valve on the system. I'm not going to be utilizing that. The E30 does have ABS, so I should be able to make that work. If I can't get the pedal feeling right, I will add the proportionate valves, because the proportionate, I hope I'm saying that correctly, is utilized with ABS or non-ABS. So if push comes to shove and maybe this is not working right, I'll throw that in there and see if it makes it feel a little bit better. So this booster and master cylinder is pretty much used from an NA Miata to an NB Miata. I want to say it may almost be the same for the NC. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah. So I figured, hey, what the heck? I'm going to give it a whirl and see if it works out. Like I said, I will know for sure once I'm test driving the car and see if brake pedal feels good. So just to give you a little bit more breakdown of the booster itself, I'm going to go ahead and take this bad boy out of the way because I'm done with this one, and is looking at the backside of the booster themselves on these. So from the mounting section of the booster for both to the center of the clevis pin bracket, the E30 is longer. It's at 5 inches, and this one is at 4 3/4. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to move the E30. I think by looking at it, the threads are the same. I'm going to move this one to the Mazda one, and then I'm going to adjust it because there is adjustability on either of these. So I should be able to get this out to the 5 inches, and that should all technically be hunky-dory. So everything should work just fine. And let me see here. Now, the other thing that I'm going to try to end up doing is trying to see if I could find a reservoir that will fit from a BMW that will fit on the Mazda cylinder. That way I can keep the brake level light or brake level sensor in check. And I think that's it. I'm looking at my notes here, and I think I got all that covered there for both boosters, the BMW and the Mazda one. And yeah, that's it. So the next step for me now is to throw that stuff back in, throw the engine in. I will pick you up there so we can kind of take a look at everything in place and go from there. So pick you up in a second. So I got everything all back together now. I went ahead and installed the radiator, the hoses, I got the dipstick, the brake booster, and the steering mechanism has been installed. And yeah, so I'm gonna grab the camera real quick. I'm gonna get a better close-up and show you still at this point some of where the hoses are rubbing, where I have to go and remove them from their quick disconnect. And I'm gonna remove the hoses from those quick connects, and I'm going to rotate them, especially this one here, so that I can get clearance on this intake, and I have to shorten them as well. But yeah, I'm going to grab the camera and let's take a look at it real quick. All right, so here is the dipstick. You can see there's that little C-notch and the engine rail. Not bad. She sticks out a little bit more than I would like it to stick out. I mean, I know the dipstick's got to go down a little bit, but yeah, kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. But hey, at least we now have a dipstick. So one of the other things I still have to do is the hoses. So on this one right here, this bin hits the AC compressor. So I will be cutting this clamp off here, and then I will be cutting this hose down and bringing the hose back this way. This engine sits a little bit forward more than the other one because the last E30 I didn't have to do this. But yeah, so this is the other hose I have to go in and modify as well. As you can see, there's the intake boot that I borrowed from the other car, and it's rubbing on the hose right there. But what I'm going to end up doing for this one is I will be removing this, cutting these off, and I'm actually going to flip the hose over to where this bin is going to be facing downward, and it will, or it should, or I'm hoping it's going to fall into this section here so that the intake boot will fall in there, will fall into place, and of course rotate it down and put some clamps on, and then that should take care of that, because the only thing I have going in here now is going to be this hose for the coolant tank, which I'm still trying to figure that out, only because I really didn't want to use a coolant tank. I wanted to try to make the engine bay nice and clean, to kind of give it a little bit of a nice, clean, smooth engine bay. So now for the steering column, let me focus a little bit. There it is right there. As you can see, she's bolted in there. The remaining of the threads, I'm going to end up cutting that off. Once I finalize everything, it'll be cut down, and it also will make it easier to install. So yeah, that one goes wrapped around the header. And then of course there is the booster. The whole headache that I had is trying to figure out which one to use. As you can see, it's very tight in there. Here's on this side right here. As you can see, there's very little space there. And then you go up to this side above the valve cover, and this is where what I was saying before was, I was trying to make it to where the valve cover can be removed, hoping that you don't have to remove this to do so. But you can see, I'm hoping you can see, there's the bolt right there. So you should be able to take the bolt out, and I'm hoping that the valve cover can come out. Here's how tight it is right here on the master cylinder there on the strut tower. So that was one of the reasons why doing a dual chamber one in this area just wasn't going to work unless I end up modifying this. But yeah, let's see if I could go this way, if you could see how much room, or actually I got a decent amount of room out of it. So yeah, I'll pick you up in a second. Okay guys, so this is it for this video. What I have left on the brake booster section is the interior section, which is the bracket that I have coming. It still has not arrived yet, so I'm going to be modifying that to get that done, and then I have the throttle pedal as well to do. But as of right now, I'm going to kind of halt on the engine stuff. I still have the coolers I got to do. I got to run all the plumbing. I have the surge tank / whatever I'm going to decide to do with that for the coolant tank. And the power steering stuff I got to figure out as well. But what I'm going to end up doing is installing the front suspension, getting the wheels on it, and I'm going to row this puppy out. I'm going to put it back on my 4-post lift, because on the 4-post lift, what I'm going to be doing is the rear end of the car, which is the reinforcement plates, the camber correction for the rear, all bearings, all new bushings. We're going to go through that whole system in the back. And yeah, so like always guys, help the channel out by doing so. You got to hit that like and subscribe button, see you in the next video.